I'm Janet Morana, Executive Director of Priests for Life. Welcome to Just Ask Janet. Well, many of you realize that I co founded the Silent No More Awareness campaign, and that, of course, with Georgette Forney of Anglicans for Life, and that helps women and men and family members who've been hurt by abortion but have gone through healing come and share their stories to help bring others to healing and also to help maybe a woman considering an abortion, maybe not to go down that road because they hear about the damage and the fallout. Well, of course, one of the best ministries all over for healing after abortion is Rachel's Vineyard, which is a ministry of Priests for Life. And they, believe it or not, are in over 75 countries. The retreat manual has been translated into about 24 languages. And joining me on today's program, because we're going to have a very lively discussion, is Dr. Theresa Burke, the founder, the brainiac, the person who conceived of this whole concept of Rachel's Vineyard is Dr. Theresa Burke. So, Theresa, welcome to the program.
Hi, Janet. So good to see you today.
You too. And of course, I have facilitated on a large number of Rachel's Vineyard retreats. And of course, I've been to your leadership conferences that we've sponsored together. And I know it's a growing ministry. I mean, I was just mentioning how many countries and languages. Do you have any more countries that might be coming on board soon?
Well, we've added about 6 more languages. I know that. We're up to 32, I think. And
Wow.
every day we're growing. Even in the pandemic, every day we're growing. There's new sites every month.
Wow.
And
Well, it's like I always say, if someone said to me, well, Janet, what happens when Roe v. Wade is overturned? I said, our job will never be done because there's been millions of people hurt by abortion and the healing has to continue, right?
Janet, that is so the truth because this goes on for generations because people who aren't healed pass on the trauma even to their children and encouraging the violence against women and of course, their children. It will go
Well,
on.
of course, right now in the news, hot topic, of course, is the heartbeat bill that was passed in Texas. And of course, so everyone understands what that means is that once a baby's heartbeat is detected, the abortion clinic cannot do the abortion. And of course, that law, of course, is being challenged by Planned Parenthood and all the abortion clinics because they see the days of their business is going out, going to get snuffed out real soon. Because brothers and sisters, that heartbeat is detected about 6.5, but no more than 7 weeks. That Doppler picks up that baby's heartbeat. So we're talking about in the very early part of that pregnancy, a baby could be saved. And of course, recently, the Supreme Court, like I said we're not going to take this case. We're going to let the Texas law stand. And then suddenly President Biden, who, as we know, is one of the most pro-abortion presidents out there, and the whole Democratic Party issued a statement saying we're gonna change that because women have a right to an abortion, and this is good for them. So, Theresa, you have spent decades with the fallout from abortion. And what would you say to the president when he says abortion is good for women? They need to have access to it. From your experience, if a woman could listen to that Doppler, if they would let her hear her baby's heartbeat, do you think that's a game changer? And then tell us a little bit maybe about the fallout.
Well, it's an amazing piece of legislation, and it's actually very exciting because it restores the humanity of a child. How do we find out if someone's alive or dead? We take a heartbeat, we listen to their pulse, and then the grieving begins or the hope begins that they're still alive. So that's just a measurement that everyone's very familiar with, that when we hear that heartbeat, we know there's life. And I think that the life of the child has been so dismissed and depersonalized, dehumanized, a blob of tissue, fetal particles. It's just not considered the human being with all of its parts intact. All it needs to do is grow. And so in my experience, of course, is the trauma that women feel that they were lied to, that this is why women find it so painful to even see pictures of human development through all of its stages. And in the pregnancy books, and there's apps now that show your baby at every minute for pregnant women. They go on these apps and they really humanize the baby. Your little one's heart is beating right now, and it tells how fast and all the things that are happening week by week. There's just a big growth that happens. So I love this. I love this whole heartbeat bill because it absolutely humanizes the child at a time a mother needs to start bonding with the baby, not deciding whether she wants to destroy it.
And don't you find, Teresa? I mean, you have listened like I have to so many stories, but you more than me, that these abortion clinics are not honest with the women. It's like there are some laws in some states, what we call women's right to know, where they're supposed to tell them about fetal development, let them see the sonogram, that they're performing on that baby. And then, the abortion clinics, they turn that Doppler down so they don't hear that heartbeat. But this law is now going to force them to turn that Doppler up. And if they hear a heartbeat, they're going to have to be told, well, sorry, you can't have an abortion here in Texas, right? But what is the fallout? Because the president's saying, "Oh, women need to have this abortion. It's good for them." It's not. But what do they say when they feel they've been lied to like this? That no one told me. I hear those words echoing in the testimonies constantly, especially with Silent No More in front of the Supreme Court when they give those testimonies. Well, no one told me that my baby was developed
Yeah.
like that. No one told me the truth. So, what is your experience as a psychologist? What does that do to a woman who's been lied to, basically?
It's actually the heart of moral injury because there's a betrayal there. And there's betrayal at many levels. There's the betrayal of the partner who might give the impression that he's not willing to stand by and support the child that he created and leaving her. There's the betrayal of the medical industry that says this is healthcare. And then when you have a bad reaction and you're assaulted by the natural response to trauma, the grief, the depression, the mental health issues, which we know have followed, the level of denial that has to be sustained, and the damage to one's maternal identity. We could go on and on, both of us, because we've both written long books about this. The damage is profound, it's insidious, and it lingers through the entire lifespan. And this is why healing is so important. In fact, almost 50% of every abortion in this country is a repeat. And repetition is one of the greatest indicators of trauma. So when we engage in healing, Janet, you know that we can immediately cut that high abortion rate in half because it's not a natural thing, and the grieving is very natural, the feeling of loss and sadness, and that is a unique child that's irreplaceable. It's not like have another one to replace it, which so many people say. So I feel like it's very minimized what they're going to go through, and they're really not told the truth. They're not told
Right.
about the consequences or the health risks or the physical and reproductive risks that they can suffer later.
Right. And of course, they're making it sound like the other side, meaning the Democratic Party, President Biden, all these abortion clinics are making it sound like um, if this bill will force women to have these babies. It's going to force them to have the babies because they can't get the abortion quick enough. By the time they find out they're pregnant, it'll be too late. Now you're going to force them to have this abortion. And it almost echoes in my mind the words of former President Obama. And he was one time quoted saying, I wouldn't want to punish my own daughter to force her to have a baby. That was one of his lines, which mean, okay, and now you're also giving permission to kill your grandchild. So what I guess I'm asking you, Teresa, is in addition to Rachel's Vineyard, you have been in private practice, right, for what, over 4 decades, where you have seen patients to come to you for counseling and help. Have you ever had a woman come to you saying, I got pregnant and I couldn't get an abortion. I regret having this baby. I mean, have you ever heard someone saying, I regret having this baby? Help me through it. Oh my gosh. Tell me
Well,
about your experience.
it takes 9 months to have a child and even adjust to your new role. There's so many changes that take place, and it's a developmental process, not just for the mother, but for the child. And when that hasn't even moved into its natural course, That's the problem here. Abortion is offered so swiftly at the time that you're just beginning that journey that's going to take a while to complete. And it's been my experience that having a child is self-healing, that whatever the obstacles were along the way, that child's accepted. And many women will say, thank God this baby's here, because I can't imagine my life without this child. And the unique gift that that child brings to the world, and the unique um, relationship that it's going to have with so many people. So a child's joy. And Janet, you used to say something like a unexpected pregnancy was an unexpected blessing or something.
Right, right.
What did you
Yeah.
used to say?
Yeah, I used to say that, while the circumstances of how you conceive the child might not be, ideal, but if every child is a gift from God, from conception to natural death, that's what we believe, of course, that's the truth. Well, then it's an unexpected blessing. The child's still a blessing, as, no matter how it got here, basically.
Yeah.
And that really strikes at the women who have been raped, and as you know, that's 1% of all abortions, and yet they always point to those cases. And I know Dr. David Reardon, and you know him quite well, did several studies that showed the women who were raped and aborted were double traumatized and regretted the abortion, and yet the women who, even though they were raped, gave birth to the child and made an adoption plan or raised the child, said, and it really goes to what you just said, the circumstances and getting through that pregnancy were maybe tough, but then once they held that baby, it just changes everything, right, Theresa? Doesn't it?
Or offer the gift of that child to a childless couple who are grieving for years because they can't produce that themselves. So adoption is a beautiful option as well. But David's book is Victims to Victors, and it's a very
Right.
good, compelling study of exactly what you said. And it's important that we remember that the child has value to somebody out there, especially in an age where so many couples are suffering from infertility and spending thousands and thousands of dollars to try to use science to create a life when in another. So it's not that the child's unwanted ever in any circumstance.
That's right. Well, let's go back into Rachel's Vineyard just a minute, because some people that are listening right now maybe aren't familiar with Rachel's Vineyard. So why don't we just give them a quick snapshot? It's of course it's a weekend, but tell them about that process from the time that woman first shows up on that retreat till that she comes on Friday, leaves on Sunday. But take us through that process of how this healing occurs.
Well, we call at the end of the process, many people call it an extreme makeover, because people leave looking beautiful inside and out, and they feel that way. So their dignity as a human being and as a mother or a father is restored, because they've allowed themselves to grieve the life of their child. That's what we're talking about. The heartbeat is a life of a child that was cut short and altered for for their time here, because of abortion, a swiftly made decision. And the retreat just allows people to explore their heart, their mother's heart, their father's heart, their grandparents' heart, at, at the cost of this loss, and how it's affected them if they're honest, because a lot of people can't be honest. Our society makes it into a debate, and that all those fine points that the human heart experiences in its loss and its grief. We just create a safe place to be able to do that work and to share stories and to invite God into the pain, because God is the healer. The author of life is the healer of the loss of life. And we do that in every circumstance, in our candle vigils for every other tragedy that's happened. So there is a human need to grieve. And Jesus himself knew that as he grieved before Lazarus's cave, before he could bring him back to death. So we just take these scriptures and we put ourselves into the stories, and we have a relationship with God in our suffering, which is a little bit different, because a lot of people think that God's going to punish them, and they just don't know his mercy. They have never had that experience. And Rachel's Vineyard brings that forth in a very powerful, profound way that changes people's lives and gives them enormous hope, because it rearranges their relationship with the lost child and with God, and most importantly, with themselves.
Yeah. Well, one of the most important things I think is I always think about if you could take, which we don't do this, but if you could take a picture of a woman on Friday night when she first arrives at that retreat, and then on Sunday when she's completed the retreat, I mean, it's a real stark difference in her facial expressions. I mean, I can see so many women coming in with their eyes are down, they're afraid to make eye contact, they look scared, they look apprehensive and uptight, and then by Sunday, it's like the weight of the world was
Exactly.
lifted off their shoulders, and now they're smiling, they're looking at you. I mean, right, Teresa? It's gradual, but over that weekend, it's some transformation, right?
Well, they leave radiant and the wrinkles are gone, the worry lines, the burden, the psychological and spiritual burden. It has been reconciled, it's been processed, it's been moved to another part of the brain that doesn't say you don't deserve anything or that you have to sabotage all because there's like an underlying shame and guilt, and that's why so many people keep it a secret. And I think it removes the shame, which is why you can have something like Silent No More because people have been freed to speak about the greatest tragedy in their lives, and they do that to honor their children, like we would when we move into a cause for any bad thing that's happened. Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. We want to honor the memory of the one that we loved and wanted to love and that we're missing by helping other people not make that mistake. And that's what Biden doesn't understand is that women do regret their abortions and that there is a worldwide movement of them. Some are more active than others, but they're all engaging in healing.
Well, and when you say worldwide, Teresa, it just reminds me of, I mean, Rachel's Vineyard is just, as we know, one of a lot of abortion recovery ministries all over. And I think one time I was talking to you or your sister Katie, and I said, well, come on, if we had to put a number, how many women have gone through Rachel's Vineyard in the past few decades? I mean, I think your sister Katie told me, oh, Janet's got to be easy over 150,000 women, right? I mean, that's
Easily
150
over that, yeah.
equally over that. That was being a conservative, and that's not counting the men, the grandparents, the siblings, other family members who've gone through it. And when you think of that number, my goodness, that's like, come on, everybody, wake up. And that's just the ones who have found healing thus far
I,
with just
I would
one abortion recovery program. And then what about all the others that are still out there hurting? Because Teresa, as you know, and you know this from the fallout, so many of these women came to you for help because their life had hit the bottom of the pit. They had abused drugs or alcohol, and all kinds of horrible things kept happening to them till finally, out of desperation, right? They reach out for help, right?
That's right, and some of them don't even know that that's what's troubling them, but we do know that when you treat that underlying trauma and all their symptoms go away, that that's actually the cause. Because if you're treating the wrong problem or you're deciding that, oh, your problem is addiction when they don't realize what's driving the addiction underneath, I think that that's a remarkable thing. And when you heal one person, you heal many people in her family, her children. It just opens up a world. So there's a ripple effect to this that I think we can estimate the numbers. Because if your mom's healed of this after she's been depressed, you actually have a healthy mother return to you, a healthy
Right.
spouse return to you. Um, and it stops, it's just such a violence in the body. And I think that if we're to think that we have any moral duty that is ultimately the most important thing we can do, it's to reclaim peace in ourselves and then reflect that towards others. Reclaim the peace in ourselves. There will be no peace in the world when everybody's in such an internal angst. So while the world seems kind of out of control right now with everything that's going on between COVID and the wars and the hurricanes and tornadoes and floods, which we're hit with right now, um, like it's it's a time of great anxiety and depression for a lot of people because they feel they have no control over their own lives. But we always have control over our spirit and how we allow it to develop and how we can invite God in to help us reconcile the things that keep us awake at night and that allow us to feel more anxiety than we should when we have a peaceful heart, knowing that all shall be well, as Saint Theresa says, that God is with us, even in our suffering, that He's here, and we need not worry, and that there's a world we're invited to after this, which we want to prepare ourselves because this
And
isn't the end; it's
And
eternity.
I want to remind everyone who's listening that they can go to rachelsvineyard.org. Again, that's rachelsvineyard.org. All the information about the retreats is there. And Theresa, you have written so much information that's up there. I really encourage everyone, again, to go to rachelsvineyard.org and be empowered with this information. Just one more thing I wanted to touch on is that I know also when people are going through this retreat and have had an abortion, very often there's been sexual abuse in their past. And now, so you have also, we're not going to go into it too deeply, but you also have done now a specialized retreat program for people who have experienced sexual abuse, right? Called Grief to Grace. Tell everyone a quick snapshot how that is a little bit different than Rachel's Vineyard.
Well, that's a week-long program, and it deals with childhood sexual abuse, neglect, physical abuse, and verbal abuse. And we also treat victims of clergy abuse through a beautiful process where people are uniting their wounds with Christ, who is also a fellow victim. We never think of God as a victim. Number one question an abuse victim asks is, where was God? Why would He allow all this to happen to me? And it's a good question that can really impact someone's trust of God as a loving father when He allowed such damage and devastation. But I saw early on that abortion is actually a traumatic reenactment of sexual abuse, and up to 60 to 70% of everyone coming on our retreats had histories of abuse. So I made another program for them and for others who suffered, and that's what Grief to Grace is.
Perfect. And of course, your work still continues because I know just recently you also wrote a retreat program for the military, and they just launched, didn't they, their first event? So tell us quickly about that one now.
Down in Houston, Texas, with New Heart of Texas, that runs Rachel's Vineyard, Grief to Grace, and now Duty to Heal. We launched from Houston our Duty to Heal. It's called Finding Peace for a Soldier's Heart. And we're also including first responders, military, aside from the military, policemen, first responders, those that are on the scene of very traumatic events that that create a great moral injury. So the retreat is we did it for 4 days down in Texas, and it went off really well. We'll be training our leaders. That'll be a training site down there in Houston, and Father Mike Mannion's going to be probably help starting some efforts up here because I ran all the pilots with him. Many of your readers, and I know people in our ministry know Monsignor Mike Mannion from Camden. So
That's right.
he's been a
Well,
speaker at Rachel's Vineyard for years, and he
I
inspired me
think,
to get in.
well, Theresa, I think Duty to Heal now is going to be a huge thing. Well, first of all, for Monsignor Mike, I know he's been very involved with the police in the state of New Jersey. He's a chaplain there for the whole state.
The FBI fireman.
Yeah, and as we know, especially too now with the war and all these different things, I mean, there are so many veterans out there that are suffering from post-traumatic stress from all that, and so I think we have to pray now for more people to come forward to want to be trained to do Duty to Heal, right?
And the good news, Jenna, for your listeners, I love to make this point. This effort is being led by post-abortive women who understand the moral injury of killing. And the soldiers receive from them because they really understand, and that's been the feedback that they've given, and they're leading the ministry. So isn't that a great mystery that those who have suffered much and been loved much are just pouring open their ointment to help others that have been through a different kind of a trauma, but one that they can really recognize and sympathize with and motivate them. And that's God. God brings life out of death, and then he motivates them to bring life to others. That's the gift of healing. It just keeps going and going and opens its heart to serve others because you're coming from a place of abundance, a place of deep healing, and you bring the gift of your faith into these environments where you see real healing because we bring people to the Lord. He's the healer. No psychology is going to heal the way that God does.
And then finally, just like there's a good housekeeping seal of approval, tell us quickly. I think you've gotten some big approval from someone that's higher up there. Tell us about your good housekeeping seal of approval for the Rachel's Vineyard program.
I'm guessing that you're talking about Pope Francis, who wrote me a letter. And do I have time to tell the story? I'll save for another time. I don't
No,
know.
it's quick. A quick. You
Okay.
can tell us a quick story.
Just
Quick.
that he sent me an email, and I didn't recognize who it was from because it came from his personal secretary, and he wrote it and signed it cordially, Francesco. So I was like, who's this? I get letters in different languages all the time from all our sites. So I thought, I don't, let me run this through the translator. And I see it's from Pope Francis. And he just said, thank you so much, because there had been delegates from and some bishops who'd been on Grief to Grace and Rachel's Vineyard. In fact, when he was in Argentina, he lived with someone who was on the Rachel's Vineyard team down there in Buenos Aires. So he heard about it for many years. And then with Grief to Grace, he asked me for more information and to send him because some bishops who had been on the retreat from Latin America visited him. So we corresponded and we connected, and I sent him things. So
Well,
that's
that's fabulous, Teresa. It just shows that you've gotten, like I said, the Holy Father seal of approval on Rachel's Vineyard. So that's fabulous. Well, thank you, Teresa, for joining me for such a lively conversation today. We covered a lot, boy, from the heartbeat bill all the way to duty to heal. So we covered a lot of ground. So again, thank you, and we're going to continue to pray that the work of Rachel's Vineyard keeps blossoming like it's doing, right? Purely
Yeah,
the Holy Spirit.
yeah. Thank you, Janet.
Well, brothers and sisters, thank you too for joining us on Just Ask Janet. And I just want to remind you of a few things. Go to rachelsvineyard.org for several things. One, to see where the nearest retreats are. But if you're interested in Grief to Grace or Duty to Heal, there's a place there where you can shoot emails. And if you have a question, and Theresa has a whole team, an office up there in Pennsylvania, they'll be back in touch with you because we're always looking to train more people, to have more Rachel's Vineyard retreat sites, more Grief to Grace training, and more of this Duty to Heal. We can't let Houston, Texas have the whole thing now. We got to have more people trained also now on Duty to Heal. Well, again, this is Janet Morano, the Executive Director of Priests for Life. Thank you for joining us on Just Ask Janet. God bless.